Hi guys, welcome back to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host, as always, Steve Hall, and in this episode, we're thrilled to welcome Brian De Costa, a champion natural bodybuilder and fitness coach. He recently won the pro overall at WNBF Worlds, arguably the most competitive natural bodybuilding stage there is, and it was against two very good pros. So I'm excited to talk to Brian. Brian shares his journey from starting in men's physique to winning the WNBF Worlds and becoming the best in the world. We'll hear about his impressive lifting career that spans 15 years, starting from his early days in running and soccer/football. Brian dives into his training split, typical set volumes, frequency and intensity, and shares insights from training with top experts Mike Israetel and Jared Feather. He also discusses the invaluable mentorship from his coach, Paul Revelia, and his future goals and ambitions, plus much more. As a reminder, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an update. Also, please share it with your friends on social media or anyone you think might enjoy it. That extra reach really helps us meet more listeners, and that will help the show grow as a whole. And if you have a moment, please leave us a positive review. Your support means the world to us, so it helps us keep growing, and I highly appreciate that. But without further ado, whether you're a seasoned lifter or just getting into the gym, Brian's advice and experience will inspire and motivate you. So let's tune in for an engaging conversation with one of the top natural bodybuilders in the world. So Brian, for the listeners, let them know exactly what your stage weight recently was, and also your height, because obviously height is important here, to give people just a picture of kind of the amount of muscle mass that you carry.
I was 198, 199. I'm not sure exactly on stage, but it was one of those two numbers, and I'm 5'9" and a half, 5'9" and a half. So,
okay.
Yeah.
The half makes me feel better because I'm 5'10" last I measured. So you are shorter than me, and your stage weight is actually more than I thought it was. I thought you were maybe 195, somewhere around there. But my highest stage weight, if I use that, has been 175 pounds. So
Okay.
that's, and I'm not huge, obviously, but as a competitive bodybuilder, a middle height, middleweight, I'm not small. I'm like nearer the top end of that. So just for the listeners, Brian is huge. You are a huge individual. So when I heard you talk through your height and weight, I was like, I mean, it makes sense. You look absolutely ginormous. So I just wanted to start with, to let the listeners know what a monster we're dealing with today.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I'm trying to keep up with the Doug Millers of the world.
I actually don't
know if it's possible, but we'll try.
Yeah, I don't know his height and weight offhand, but again, complete mass monster. And I mean, we don't see too many of these in the world. So yeah. You are, like, when we're thinking about this average bell curve, Brian is all the way to the right in terms of more of a hyper responder to weightlifting and the amount of muscle mass you carry. So, but obviously it hasn't all just, you weren't born this way. You've had to have worked hard for it. And so am I right in thinking that this season was your second bodybuilding competitive season, but did you compete in men's physique one time as well? Let listeners know a bit about your competitive history.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2017 is about the 10-year mark. Let me think, 8 or 9 year mark into weight training. And I got the itch to do a competition. At that point, I had started, sharing content online. I had really developed a passion for weight training. I wanted to start venturing into helping people lose fat, gain muscle, all that good stuff. And then a mentor that I had met online was like, well, why don't you do a competition? You still are thirsting for a competition. Why don't you try it out? So long story short, yes, I did a NPC men's physique show in San Diego, California, in 2017. And overall, I enjoyed the process. I definitely realized it wasn't for me, the men's physique division. I just didn't feel like it was for me. I didn't have the tapered physique. I was a little too blocky. I've got these big obliques. The posing, I just felt a little bit awkward with. Like I said, I still look back on that competition in a positive light. It taught me a lot, but I definitely realized, like, okay. And not only that, but I had probably 15 pounds more mass on stage than all the other kids that I was competing with, but they presented it much better. I think they were leaner. I didn't do well. I didn't even get any call outs. I was just like in the back. So I was like, okay, that was cool. It's not for me. Fast forward 2 years. In 2019, I did a WNBF show and a couple OCB shows. So I did the Muscle Mayhem in Sacramento, California, which is always usually in July, and a pretty big West Coast show in the States. And I think that was my best look in 2019. Got on stage, first foray into bodybuilding. I felt I looked very good. I think my coach helped me peak very well for that. It was definitely eye-opening seeing the level of physique that showed up to that show, just how lean everybody was. I ended up winning the heavyweight division in the amateur. And then a guy named Marvin from China won the lightweight. He won the lightweight. I forget who won the middleweight, but Marvin ended up winning his pro card at that Muscle Mayhem show. Looked absolutely dialed, looked amazing. And then I did a couple of OCB shows. I got my pro card in the OCB in 2019 as well, in Tampa. And then I decided to compete at the Yorton Cup, which is like the OCB's world championship effectively. And it was fairly well attended. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly the amount of competitors, but there were at least 30, 40 guys there. And just again, it blew my mind, the level of conditioning that I saw in these guys, even dudes into their 40s and 50s, even into their 60s. I'm just like, what is this new world I've stumbled upon? Like, I didn't even really know this existed, and did not do well at the Yorton at all. Didn't, place or anything. But again, I really enjoyed that experience, and showed me that I have some work to do. And then I had a 4-year off season. COVID hit. And just with the uncertainty of whether shows would happen and whatnot, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this time. I love training, so I'm just going to continue doing my best to put on mass. And I had my pointers for what I needed to improve on next competition round. And it just so happened that last year, everything lined up. It made sense. Was at a good point in life where I'm like, okay, I can take a crack at this again. And then last year, I ended up going pro in the WNBF at a show out in Boston. And the name of the show, unfortunately, is escaping
Monster
me.
Mash. Is that the one? The WNBF Monster Mash?
Yeah, the Monster Mash. I get confused with Muscle Mayhem and Monster Mash, the different names. But yes, thank you. Yeah, the Monster Mash. And ended up getting my pro card. And then I competed the next day there and won the pro show. There was a mass monster there too named Oscar. I need to show you this guy. I mean, you might have seen him already, but this dude is an absolute beast. If he was just a little bit leaner, I think he definitely would have won. But either way, winning that pro show gave me the confidence to like say, okay, let's take this all the way. In a couple weeks, I'm going to compete at Worlds in Seattle. Cleared the schedule and ended up taking the heavyweight division at Worlds, and then won the overall, which is still like a surreal thing to me. To go from amateur to world champ in 2 weeks is like, still have a hard time wrapping my head around it, but it's super cool. I was super humbled. Seeing the dudes backstage was unreal. It was a great experience. Really cool.
Yeah, it's also nice to hear, because I think sometimes people look at someone like you and they just see the tip of the iceberg. But to hear you competed your first season, despite it being like the NPC and men's physique, not the same division, not the same federation, but you didn't really do all that well. But you stuck with it.
Oh, no.
You did another season, learned a shitload, did pretty well, but felt like you had more to give. And then you've come back, and then it's all kind of like taken off from there. I think a lot of people might look at this past season for you and just be like, God, Brian had it easy. Look how much muscle he's got. Yeah. Look how lean he is. Look how great he was. He beat off two amazing other competitors in Benjamin and Dirk as well at the WNBF Worlds.
Oh my God,
which was incredible to watch, which I can see why it was surreal for you, because it was kind of surreal watching these guys on stage.
I know.
But it's nice to hear a bit of a backstory behind you, and the fact that, yeah, again, it didn't just land on your plate. You had to work for it, however that was for you. So it was nice that you stuck it out. Was there anything in particular that kept you, because obviously NPC was your first show, what led you to the natural shows? Was there anything in particular like led you in that right direction?
You want to know what? I think it was just, always being a natural athlete. And again, I have nothing against guys who choose the alternate route, the enhanced route. Perfectly fine. I think there's quote unquote, right ways to do it and wrong ways to do it. I think after doing that show and just hearing more talk in the competitive world, just realizing that if you want to get to a certain level, which I'm a competitive guy, I want to excel at what I do, especially things that I'm super passionate at. When I first growing up, it was all about playing soccer, football, and then playing guitar. And I just wanted to be the best. And then that was done. And now it's kind of been bodybuilding. So I think I just realized I would have to compromise on things I'm unwilling to do in the untested side of things. I think that tide may be shifting, and we can talk about that later, just with Ben Weider getting into natural shows and stuff, which I think is awesome. But at least, 7, 8 years ago, I was like, okay, is there natural competing? Is there a thing where there's drug tested? And then that's when I found the WNBF, OCB, where there is drug testing. And I was like, okay, I want to be on a level playing field, essentially, is what it was. So
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think for me, I actually stumbled upon, I know a lot of the listeners will know this, like Matt Ogus and 3DMJ, and they were just all about natural bodybuilding. So I didn't really even consider the enhanced side. It was just like, this is the way I'm going to go. This is what I love. Let's just go for it. Whereas unfortunately, and I think it's environments when you're young and very kind of easily convinced to go down a certain route. I think some people get lucky or unlucky with that sort of thing. And like you said, nothing against the enhanced side, but it's great to see people like yourself who, like, I could see the temptation of, like, if I'm this good naturally, you look at like a Phil Heath who, when he was young, or like a Ronnie Coleman, they're big naturally. And then you look at them kind of for that Mr. Olympia, but that side has never been something you've decided, hey, I want to go into that. It's like, no, you weigh up the risks and rewards. It's not for you, which I think is a totally fair thing to go and think about.
Yeah. I think of Sean Clarita as well, who did the natural competing, and then I think he's a 212 competitor, maybe. I don't know if he's gone to open in the IFBB, but yeah, just like, I think at any point a natural guy will consider it every once in a while. It's like, oh, what would it be like? And sure, I've had those thoughts too, but it goes against the whole reason why I train. I train for health and for longevity and to live a more full, capable life. Yeah. And for me, it would be going against the whole reason why I train. And as we know, as coaches online, like, this is a passion of mine. It's a message I want to spread. And, you don't get paid a lot for winning shows. You often don't get paid anything for winning shows. Competing often doesn't help you much with your business. If anything, it can take away from it because you're feeling so run down and you're super prep focused. So, for me, it just never made sense. And then my foray 2019 into natural competing, that's when I realized, oh, this is where Matt Ogus and Chris Lovato used to compete, and Chris Bearcat, and holy crap, like, this show in Sacramento, the first time I met everyone there, it was like everyone was getting along, was complimentary of each other, was sharing how prep went. The NPC show that I did in San Diego, like, everyone stayed to themselves. The vibe was just super different. It was like the natural competing world feels like a family in many ways. Like, you see someone, you give them a hug, like, hey, what's going on? How was prep? Or like, what athlete do you have here? It's super fun. It's a great place to be. Yeah. It's where I should be.
Yeah, I like that. And I love that it's a case of you get everything. And this is when I talk about it, people ask me like, oh, would you ever consider going enhanced? It's like, yeah, like you said, like, you think about it once you've been training a while and you see like some huge guys, like, oh man, that seems quite cool. But I come back to, why do I do natural bodybuilding, or why do I bodybuild? Why did I get into this? Like, what aspects about it do I love? It's like, well, yeah, the outcome is cool, looking bigger and being stronger, but ultimately you've got to love the process to eventually get to that outcome anyway. And I can do that process naturally. Yeah, it might be a bit slower, as like watching paint dry at times, but it's very fulfilling and I do it regardless. So I think that's totally cool. And if anyone's following you, Brian, which I'm sure many of the listeners do, but if they don't, it's clear to me that, yeah, bodybuilding is part of who you are, but it's not Brian. You're not Brian, and you don't identify as I am the bodybuilder. You're not hardcore. This is all you're about. There's many kind of aspects of your life, and I think that's really cool.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Yeah, everyone's different. Everyone has a different relationship with competing, and I'm careful to say like right and wrongs with things, but just to speak for myself, it's like the icing on the cake. Like, I love training. I love the way that training makes me feel. I love the way that eating properly the majority of the time makes me feel. I like that bodybuilder lifestyle. And, if every 2-3 years I get this itch where it's like, let's see how sick I can look now. And like, let's diet down and let's do a show. For me, that's a natural, good relationship with it. And I often see the other side. And I think that's a danger with social media, with young kids coming up. I think, maybe placing too much of their stock or identity in this perceived value of what competing can get them. And again, I'm careful to say right or wrong, but like, for me, I think it's like love the lifestyle, love the training, love how it makes you feel, and do the competing because we're humans and we have a competitive itch. Maybe we did organized sports growing up, but we don't have that anymore. And you love being in the gym. So yeah, dude, do a freaking show. See what you look like. Step on stage next to some other guys. See how you stack up. But I'll never be the guy who's like every single year it's like I'm going to diet down and I'm going to win and I'm going to win and I'm going to win and this is the time. Like, for me, I know that mentality would mess with me and it would make me stop enjoying the lifestyle as much. So I try to keep it in a box, like where it doesn't overcome me.
I think it's a really refreshing perspective to have. It reminds me a bit. I've watched a CBum interview where he talked about his kind of perspectives around competing, and obviously he is like the pinnacle of the enhanced side in many ways, with Classic becoming so popular. But his relationship with bodybuilding was very similar to that, I think, in what you said there, where I think if something feels like it's starting to take over your life a little bit, where maybe the kind of stress that it's providing outweighs the rewards that it's providing you, I don't think that's a great relationship to have with it. So I love the perspective you had there. And also the fact that you're like, hey, there's no right or wrongs here, I'm saying, but this is the way I've viewed it and the way that it's treated me well. And certainly I can say the same. And I think a lot of the people listening, a lot of the guys at like 3DMJ, you listen to like Jeff Alberts, he would say the exact same sort of thing as what you said there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think, I think there's something to be said for managing stress too. Like, just like your cortisol, like if you're putting all this pressure on yourself all the freaking time, like I'd be so uptight with it. Like, I don't even know if I would bring my best look if I was like placing all this stock in it. I think the mentality side of things of how you approach it is so pivotal as well, where, I've had my ups and downs with prep, just being hungry and having to do cardio when I don't want to and all that stuff like anyone. But overall, I've tried to be aware of like, hey man, this is a privilege to do. And this is like super cool that I can do this and inspire my clients and inspire people online. And people don't think you can look like this naturally. And I can break down paradigms for people. Like, this is super freaking cool that I can even do this and get on stage and compete with these guys. Like, that perspective for me, just like allows me to like stay calm about it and not like place too much stock. Cause I can go into that other side too of like, gosh, I want to win. Like, I want to win, I think a little duality may be helpful, but you got to put it in its place.
Yeah. I think I've heard you on some other interviews where you're like, no, I'm going to take it. Like, I'm going to like win this. So it's not that you're against that mentality at all, of that kind of,
no,
I guess, positive, maybe slightly ego driven, but like in a positive way. It's just, you have balance. You can switch it on when you need it, and you can turn it off when you don't. And actually, that's a characteristic I see of some really good competitive athletes. So the fact you have that too, I think is only helping you.
Yeah, no, and I'd be lying if I say like, I want to win every show that I do, like 100%. Like, I don't think any athlete should show up not wanting to win. But then how do you do that? You can only control your own actions. You can only control what you do. So regardless, the protocol, like what I'm actually going to do day to day is going to be the same. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do all my cardio. I'm going to do all my training. I'm going to track all my nutrition. I'm going to monitor how I'm feeling. I'm going to practice my posing. I'm going to practice my routine. And yeah, like I'm going to do everything in my power so I can win this show, but I'm also not going to make it mean something about my identity if I don't win. Like I'm going for gold, but like if I don't win, that's fine. I'll be pissed, but it's fine. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want like a panel of judges who like have this subjective, objective criteria to be like determining your self-worth. It's like you determine that, you're in control of that, right?
Absolutely. That's a perfect whole other thing. Yeah. Bodybuilding's not like powerlifting. We don't get like 3 green lights. It's, you know, there is science to it and your symmetry and your posing and stuff, but it's still, you know, it still depends on the judges. Did they catch, you know, where were their eyes going? Like there's so many different factors, you know?
Absolutely.
It's a great point.
So yeah, question to you then, like as in becoming the best in the world, did that mean anything to you? And in addition to that, I just want to like bring this point up because I just thought this was great, was that it was actually a unanimous win. It wasn't like you were just the best in the world against 2 very high competitors. It was like you were clearly the best in the world, which was like pretty incredible. But did it change anything for you? What does it mean to you?
Man, it meant a lot to me because it meant so much to me. And Bob called me, you know, 5-6 months after the win a while back and was just like, hey, I want to let you know it was a unanimous win. And that absolutely blew my mind away. And, you know, I it was a tough year for me. My dad passed, my grandfather passed, and just had some tough family stuff going on. And that was all during my prep. And I didn't know whether I was going to compete in the year. Like everything lined up. Like I said earlier, I was like, okay, this makes sense. Like I've had a 4-year off season. Let's do it. And then all this life stuff happened. And then I was like, you know, what would my dad say? My dad was always a super hard worker, successful guy, really focused on personal development, cared about his health as well. And he would want me to see it through. Like you made a commitment to yourself. You said you were going to do this, see it through, put your best foot forward, do it, like run through the finish line. So that win was really for him and my grandfather when I won. And ultimately I, you know, like I say, I lift because it brings me so much reward and I always try to get better with it. But feedback that I would get from my coach and from other, you know, peers in the space, like the Matt Oguses and Chris Lovatos and other online coaches, like I would get feedback and from my sponsor saying like, hey dude, like you should really try to do your best in this competition. I think you have what it takes. And when I reached out to my coach, Paul Revelia, this past season, say, hey, I'm ready for a prep. The first thing he said to me on the phone, it said, if you're not going for winning worlds, you're wasting your time. And I don't feel like coaching you, to be honest. That's the first thing he said to me. Because,
So
because in 2019 when I competed, he felt that I was almost there, but then I didn't practice my posing nearly as much. I practiced posing like 2 or 3 weeks out. That was like it, and it was super half-ass. And it showed on stage. Like I was shaky on stage. I was not confident with my transitions. So he basically just said that to me. It was like, you have the potential to be world class if you do everything right. And if you're not willing to do that, like I don't want to have this athlete with all this potential that comes up short. So I just want to see that effort from you. Are you willing to do it? And that was really like a gut punch for sure. And I was just like, that lit a fire under my ass. I think he knew exactly what to say. But yeah, it meant so much because I felt within me, like having trained for almost 17 years now, it's like I'm at like a prime of my, like a prime physical part of my life. I'm 32 years old, going on 33. Like I'm like, all these things are aligning. Like it would, like if I'm going to do it, like strike while the iron's hot, like this is a time where I can really just like freaking go for it. So the fact that I ran through that finish line is like, it'll go down as one of the great accomplishments of my life. Like easily, like super cool.
I love that. Yeah, I think it just gives, again, the backstory of what's happened in your life and the drivers behind you. It gives people, again, just see the physique, they see the trophies, but the meanings behind it all, because like you said, you don't win a ton of money from doing this. It doesn't really help the business, maybe a whole lot, but the meaning to you as an individual, it's incredible to hear that. And also the relationship that you have with Paul, I think is great. Paul's been on the podcast, so people, if they haven't listened to the Paul Revelia podcast, they should. I might have to bring him back on to talk about things, but the fact he saw that in you too, and again, knew how to like push your buttons. And it reminds me of the whole, hey, like you could have the best genetics in the world, but if you don't work hard at it, you're not going to get anywhere, or not as far as you should. Whereas someone else, I might have been Marvin back in 2019, where maybe he wasn't as well endowed as you, but he did everything he needed to do to be a professional. So he took it.
Yep.
And precisely. Now you're not leaving anything to chance anymore.
Well, I think he might compete again. So we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. I feel like this year, I'm not going to compete this year, but I'm really excited to watch Worlds. I feel like there's going to be some phenomenal athletes showing up. It'll be a joy. It'll be a joy to see. But yeah, man, I can't even put into words. It's such a meaningful thing. And you know, and we can get into this topic later if we need to, but like, I like representing natural bodybuilding because I think the sentiment online so heavily has been skewing in the last 3 to 5 years towards like just a pessimistic view of any guy online that looks great is like on steroids and you have to do all these compounds. And I don't know if it's the rise of TikTok or if the internet is just naturally a bit more cynical, social media, but like I like being a representative of doing it a natural way where it's like you don't have to compromise your health. You can still build, like people really think to build an impressive physique that they're proud of, that is heavily muscled, like you have to compromise your health and double age your organs and get all this acne and oily skin and sacrifice your mental health and your hormones. And you just don't have to do that. You just don't have to. But like kids are growing up now thinking like that's the way. And like everything's trend and everything's HGH and how much test are you on? It's like none, bro. Literally none. I've been patient. I started training when I was 17 years old. I'm a 32-year-old man and I've been consistent training 48, 49, 50 weeks a year consistently. I've had bad weeks. I've had bad months. I've had bad years of training where I didn't make much progress, but I've been showing up. I don't not show up. I show up. And you can do it. Like you can do it. And that's why I think what we do is so important, man. Like the 3D MJs of the world. It's so important, man, because like I feel like we're a voice that's kind of being overcome these days. And we just have to keep it. The pendulum will swing back eventually. I'm not hopeless by any means, but I like being that representative along with you and everybody else. It's super important.
Yeah, I agree for sure. It's kind of sad to see that people are just so unwilling to invest, I think, the time and energy into it, where, I don't know, if you had $1 million business, they wouldn't look at you, Brian, and be like, oh, like that just all fell on your lap, like you've cheated to get there. They'd be like, oh, you probably worked really hard for a long time to get to that point. But for some reason, when it's your physique, they're just like, oh, they can't see the error in their ways. And I think for some people, maybe they're a bit lost and confused and they need a good coach to kind of, someone like yourself or over here, like we can help them out and kind of put them on the right track because they can seem lost. But unfortunately, and in this day and age, I think it is like that quick return. People don't want to put in too much time and effort into things. And if natural bodybuilding is anything, it's delayed gratification personified. Like you have to 100%. Wait a long time to start seeing things. So yeah, I mean, it used to be for me, I know there was a time when I was first getting into it where I'd look up to people like they could have been yourself or like it was Matt Ogus. And like I really wanted Matt Ogus's physique and I'd put in years and I'd be like, man, why don't I look like him yet? And little did I realize I just needed even more time. Like, and then I was going to get somewhere close and I was never going to look like Matt, but I was going to look at my best. And I think that's what people
I'm seeing you
forget.
Lately, your posts lately.
I'm just lean.
No, man, you look phenomenal, man. You look great.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I think it is that And to hear that is incredibly humbling and really rewarding because of how I know how much time and effort I've put into it. And I think people they forget that what you initially said, that process, falling in love with the endeavor of knowing not only are you trying to look physically better and like you want to look more muscled, but you're also feeding yourself well, you're taking care of your sleep, recovery, you're training hard in the gym. These are all positive things for you just as a human. And so it's like a tag along benefit almost, if you can think about it like that, versus being so focused on, am I there yet? Am I there yet?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I don't know if there's a way to realize your potential without enjoying the process. Is it even possible? I don't know. Like, and that's the risk I see some people fall, some young men, and I think it's natural. Like you want something so bad, you're willing to sacrifice anything, and you've got this end goal in your mind. But if it's at the detriment of your experience and you start dreading your training, and then you start dreading having to weigh your food and prepare your food, and the whole thing just slowly turns into drudgery. Are you bringing your best at that point?
Yeah.
So I think, I think keeping a grasp and a hold on why you started in the first place is such a, that's priority number one. Is like, hey, dude, remember, you love this shit. Like you love doing this. Like, even if you don't compete, like look what training brings to you. Look what, honoring your body with good food the majority of the time does for you. Like it helps your relationship. It helps your mental health. It helps your work, your sleep. Like, look at all these benefits you're getting from this. And competing is just the icing on the cake. This is freaking awesome.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned, Brian, that you used to run, I think, and also you played soccer/football here in the UK. What led you away from those? Like, were you good at those as well? Were you always good at like a variety of sports, or were there some that you were better at? I'm always interested to hear about that.
Yeah, soccer was my first. I'll call it football. I'll concede. It is not soccer. It's football. I've always been a huge football fan, and I played from age 4 through high school. I was a center mid, and I was my soccer team captain. I was pretty good. I didn't have a lot of natural talent. I think I was really fast, and it was hard to knock me off the ball. So I was able to possess the ball well. I considered playing in college. I visited a handful of schools, Division 2 and 3 schools. I wasn't good enough to play Division 1, but I ultimately decided not to play in school and just to focus on studies, because being a student, I have massive respect for student athletes. I think that the life of being a full-time student and athlete is quite intense. But yeah, it was all from age 4 to 17, 18. It was soccer, travel football, high school. And then I also in middle school and high school ran cross country, and I ran track. So I was more or less a runner. I was constantly running. It's a 5K at least in the States, with cross country in high school. Our meets are always a 5K. So 3.1 mile run, constantly trying to get better at the 5K. And then in track, I did the 1600 meter. So the 1 mile and the half mile, the 800 meter. So kind of middle distance. And I graduated high school at 148, 149 pounds. So I don't know what that is in kilos, but probably like 70.
Yeah, around that.
Would that be right? Maybe
Yeah.
some. Yeah, sounds about right. So I was an athlete, and I was lean. I had never lifted before. Um, so yeah, as soon as I started lifting, I started gaining mass very quickly. But yeah, that was my base. And there's a lot of good athletes. There's a lot of good bodybuilders who I feel started with cardio-based sports, whether it's football or swimming. There's certain sports that I feel like they tee up an athlete to be a great bodybuilder. Like gymnastics, obviously, is one of them. But like I've noticed this correlation with people playing football or gymnastics or swimming or being a runner, where like I don't know if it's like getting those muscles adapted, like their cardiorespiratory system's great, but like I think that teed me up well to be able to push it hard in the gym.
So it's really interesting because when I found that out about you, I was like, man, this sounds like me. I was very similar in
Yeah.
terms of like mid-distance runner. I played football and I ended up leaving it for study as well, where I was just like, I can't get to play football because it's hours away, but I'd have to like not do certain lessons within school. So it was just like, hey, let's prioritize studies and not do that. Yeah, it's not to say I'm on your level of, I'm not even close to your level of bodybuilder, but it's interesting to hear at least like body weights wise before I started lifting. I probably wasn't much too different from you in terms of that, and that's why I don't think anyone can really tell kind of from their base, like before you start lifting, you don't know how good you're going to respond initially to weight training. Like you said, you kind of grew really well initially. I can't say I grew amazingly well. I grew okay, probably pretty average. But I think at least if anyone's listening and they're like early within it, it can sometimes just take a long time to see that kind of progress come through and what your ability is. Do you miss the sports at all out of interest?
I do. I do. I miss playing soccer. I was actually just at a game a few days ago. My girlfriend and I have a gym out here in Denver called Transform, and the gym manager, his name's Charlie. His wife is a semi-professional soccer player. So we went to her game and just watching it, I was getting super into the game. I was like getting super animated on the side. Just like, oh, play it. I was just getting super into it. So yeah, I do. And I think eventually maybe I'll try to play again. I just think that level of fatigue that can build up from playing will impede on my performance in the gym. And just at this stage, that's not something I'm not willing to sacrifice on. But yeah, I do miss it. I do miss going for long runs. It was very therapeutic for me mentally. It was almost like my own form of therapy, which that's what the gym is for me now. But like, I also loved going on runs outside, going for a 5-6 mile run or something. But again, like I said, with playing football is I think it would, the fatigue buildup, it would just make it harder to progress. It would work against being a bodybuilder ultimately. So I've hung that up for now.
Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger.
Yeah, I completely see why you would, because I remember it was years ago now, but I played like a one-off five-a-side game because I was invited to it. I don't play regularly at all. And I was sore, and obviously you adapt to it and everything, but I was sore for like a week in muscles that I was like, hey, I'm just not fit for this.
That's what I'm saying.
It beats you up and you're serious about your training, and that's a good transition actually. What does your split look at the moment? Do you train how many days a week? What does it tend to look like?
Yeah, I used to do 6 days a week very consistently. And then I realized this is probably in between 2 to 3 years ago, I realized 6 days was a bit much for me, just based on the level of volume I like to hit per session and the intensity. So I bumped it down to 5 days a week. So now I do, and it's pretty much been this way for the last 2 years, is Monday will be quad dominant leg day. Tuesday will be a push day, chest, shoulders, triceps. Wednesday will be pull day, so primarily back, and I'll deadlift on Wednesday. I'll do off day on Thursday, and then on Friday I will do glute and hamstring dominant leg day, posterior chain focus. And then on Saturday I'll do an upper body day where it's a good balance of push pull. I'll also hit arms. The latter half of the session on Saturday will be arms. So I'll get push pull, some arms in, and then I rest on Sunday. So that has been the sweet spot for me, is having 5 days training, 2 days off. Per session, I'm hitting anywhere from like 15 to 25 sets. So a bit on the higher, I would say. And I've always trained that way, really, since being a beginner. Obviously, my strength is, as a beginner, was nowhere near it is now, but like just being acclimated to that level of work. And I also think being an athlete growing up plays into it. But yeah, that's really the split, and it's pretty high volume.
Yeah, I mean, I think people hear that and they're like, yeah, it sounds reasonable, like training muscle groups twice a week. And the volume side is something that I clicked into some of your workouts, because you share loads of your workouts, and I was like looking at what you were doing. I was like, oh, I did not expect these volumes that you were doing. And I was like, I feel bad I'm like, I really want to bring up my legs. And I look at some of your leg sessions. I'm like, I don't know if I'd be able to recover from that personally. So it's like, it just shows that individual variation and like difference between things. You mentioned intensity as well there. Do you use proximities to failure and things like RPEs in your training as well?
100%. Yeah. RPE, RIR scale, I try to be cognizant of it. I'm not always perfect with it. And sometimes the ego will get the best of me and I'll go a little closer to failure. But what I've tried to do, and has served me well the last couple of years, is a 4-week rotating training block, where week 1 will be primarily RPE 7s, a bit at higher rep range, like 12 to 15 rep range on my compounds, maybe a bit higher rep range on the isolation stuff. Week 2, RPE 8s, so saving a couple reps, and then primarily the 8 to 12 rep range. So I'm going a bit lower for week 2. And then week 3 is RPE 9, even 10s, and I'm in the 6 to 10 rep range on my compounds. Again, maybe a little higher on the isolation stuff. And then I deload on week 4. So yeah, generally it's like proximity to failure is increasing over a 3-week period as the load is increasing, just because the rep range is going down. And I just track my sessions, and I'm referencing that respective week from the prior training block, whether I'm in week 1 or 2 or 3. And I'm trying to get one better. I'm trying to add a 2.5 or a 5-pound plate, or I'm trying to get one more rep with the same weight from last training block. I mean, you know it more than anyone. Progress is slow. Some training blocks I don't really make any progress, or maybe it's one exercise, but yeah, that's what I found that works best for me. And yeah, I just need to deload pretty frequently, just because I like my compounds.
Yeah, that's one thing. Your volume's pretty high. Obviously, you're training close to failure there, but keeping kind of some reps in reserve now and then, which I think is smart to kind of mitigate having to deload sooner than that week. But you're clearly like big and strong. And if anything, we see people who tend to be big and strong, they accumulate fatigue a little bit quicker than smaller, weak individuals. Like when you started, you probably, like, we never needed really a deload in the first few years. Kind of life did that for us. But once you're working with such high loads and the fatigue that comes, do you know your any? Because I think the listeners will be interested. I never really care about these things, but for strength, like, do you know any of like your 5 rep maxes on some of these big compound lifts, like offhand?
I know. So on deadlift earlier this year, I did 600 pounds. So, or no, it was 600 pounds for 6 reps. I'm not sure what that would be in kilos, but maybe like 280 or 290.
Yeah, pretty heavy.
Yeah, pretty heavy. On squats, a 5 rep max, I think, is like 485. I got 485, and this is last year. I haven't tried to beat these this year. But and on bench press, push muscles have always been what I'm trying to bring up. I feel like my legs and my back are pretty dominant. I'm always trying to have my chest catch up. But 315 on bench. So maybe 145 or so kilo, I would guess. For 6 is my best. And I was really proud of that. That's probably the proudest I've ever been, because 3 plates on the bench press has always been something that I've wanted to hit, and I just could never do it for years, but I did. That was also last year. So yeah, my days might be numbered with trying to get personal bests in the 5 rep range or below. I think my days are numbered there, just because I don't know if the risk is worth the reward. But
Sure.
probably a higher rep range. Yeah, the 6 to 10 range. But yeah, young guys, you guys can keep going. You guys can keep going for it.
Those are some wild numbers. Again, to put it in context, I don't know if I can even do a single with any of those that you mentioned there. I don't know. I haven't gone for singles for a long time, but I know my 5 rep max is wildly far from that. So yeah, it makes sense with the amount of muscularity that you have. And you're going to have to be strong with that. It comes as a bonus for us bodybuilders. And it makes me think, if you ever thought about powerlifting, because I would have thought, man, if you specifically trained for that for even a few months, you could do some damage in that arena as well.
I thought about it years back, and I actually started on a powerlifting meet prep, and I got 2 or 3 weeks in, and I just really didn't like how specific the training was. And for me, for that reason, it became a no-go, just because I really like the way that I train. I like the way that the gym makes me feel. And I felt a little too restricted just with, working off of percentages of 1 rep maxes and knowing exactly what my sessions needed to be. I ultimately just found it wasn't for me. Plus, just like that thought of a meet day and hitting it, it wasn't super exciting to me the way that anticipating a bodybuilding show was. I didn't get that kind of excited, oh, let's do this feeling. So
That makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I did do a bit of powerlifting, and the reason I gave it up was that exact reason. I went through a whole kind of peaking process and intensification phase and all of this, and I was just like, man, I'm so bored of squat, bench, and deadlift. So I eventually hung it up, actually, because I got injured, but I was always preferring my bodybuilding training anyway, so I can completely relate to that and respect that. Brian, you recently also trained with Mike Israetel, Jared Feather, who the listeners will be well aware of. What was that like? Was it different to the way you typically train? Did you take anything away from it? Was it all a positive experience, or are there any things from it where you're like, I wouldn't continue training that way? Because I'd be very interested, because they train in quite, for some people, a unique way.
Yeah. So we were at the Arnold. This was that training session was actually about 3 months ago. We were at the Arnold in Columbus, Ohio, and I was messaging with Jared. Jared and I have just kind of stayed in contact in the DMs, because he used to be a natural bodybuilder, and he pays attention to natural bodybuilding. So long story short, we got together to do a workout. I was super excited because I've long time been a fan of Dr. Mike. I think we all have a love for Dr. Mike and his sense of humor and his training knowledge. So I was super excited to do it. And we hit a leg day, and they were exactly as I expected. Absolutely hilarious dudes. Very good trainers, very good at giving me cue points, what to focus on, form, tempo. And I don't know if they did this just for me or if this is how they train everyone, but for me, we really took each rep super slow. It was priority on time under tension. Man, I want to say we did 3 movements, barbell good morning, and then pit shark squat, and then we finished with barbell squat. Yeah, we only did 3 movements, and I'm telling you, man, I was sore for 10 days. I had to walk down the steps backwards for 2 days because my quads were so shot. But I'm telling you, it was full. It was stickler on form, full range of motion, and the eccentric was anywhere from 6 to 10 seconds. And then then a solid 1 to 2 second pause at full extension, and then a pretty explosive concentric. And on barbell squat, we got up to 185, and so whatever that would be, 85-ish kilo. And dude, I was shot. I think we did 3 sets per exercise, and I averaged probably 8 to 12 reps per set. But I did take away from that session that, it's not how much you do, it's how you do it. And I think as bodybuilders, we can get carried away with, getting too tied to numbers in times, and, I need to be adding weight to the bar, or I need to be getting an extra rep. And what that session made me realize is, hey, how about you focus on the quality of each rep and get super specific on that, and all you got to do is slow the rep down and really focus on a full range of motion, and you can use half the load. So that was the biggest takeaway for me, is like, hey, this is probably great for longevity in the sport. It's definitely better for joints. I know I got a great stimulus on the muscle. That being said, that's the positive side of things. I think for me, enjoyability is such a big factor with training. I have to be excited for it, that I don't know if I can fully implement the RP style of training just perpetually into the future, even if on paper, scientifically, like, it's the best thing to do for muscle hypertrophy. I can't say I'm fully in, just because of the enjoyability. I still like my heavy weights, but I think there's a balance that we can find where it's like, hey, do you need to do 3 or 4 difficult compounds in a session? No, you don't. 1 can be enough, or 2 can be enough, depending on the intention that you bring to each rep in each set. It was really, really humbling. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I think I've obviously had Mike and Jared over to the UK several times. We've done like workshops and stuff. So I've seen them. I've never actually been coached through a set with them, but I've obviously seen them coach people through things. And you're completely right. Like, they're very good coaches. They have good coaching eyes, cueing. They know the right amount of that. And they do tend to like that nice, slow, controlled, eccentric pause in the bottom. And I can imagine how different that is from your usual style of training, the novelty impact of that. And I think you took most things pretty much to failure, or at least very close. So no wonder that kind of led to just this crazy amount of soreness. But I think, it makes me think of, clearly what you've been doing has worked. Just look at your physique, right? So there's many ways to generate a stimulus. That's the way I tend to think about it now, is like, the more I've kind of experimented with different things and methods, and I've certainly done a lot of the RP protocols myself, I come back to that kind of, there's many roads to Rome. Like, hypertrophy is very permissive. I know Jeff Nippard and Dr. Pack and a few others, and I had them on the podcast, Dr. Pack on the podcast, to talk about technique and how much science do we have to kind of say we should lift a certain way, and we don't have a whole lot. We have quite broad strokes in terms of what works. And then you look at bodybuilders through the years, and man, Jay Cutler lifted a certain way, Ronnie lifted a certain way, Arnold lifted a certain way. They probably navigated towards the one they enjoyed the most. And I think the enjoyment aspect, like you said, ultimately is actually really important, because it comes back to that initial point of, you're not going to keep going if you don't enjoy it. Like, if you hate going into sessions because you're trying to fit, actually, then this is a common problem at the moment, I think, where people are trying to fit into a box they don't want to, in terms of, this is optimal, I must do this way. And if they absolutely hate that, I mean, you're not going to keep going for very long. So I think your point of, you have learned things, you're going to take stuff away, but you're not going to suddenly just shift all your training to be this certain way of doing things, because you've got your own experience of what's generated results.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's really cool, the amount of authorities in the space that you've been able to speak to and really get a good survey of what everyone thinks on this topic. I think Dr. Pack, I found him, I think in the last year or so. I think he's absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
He gives Dr. Mike a run for his money, but I think ultimately, if there's a through line that I've found just with coaching and coaching myself, it's, a meeting of enjoyability and I think overall proximity to failure, how hard you push yourself with that training that you enjoy, and are you measuring progress over time to get better? Because if you are measuring progress over time to get better, as the years go by, you're going to be running up against some pretty tough barriers inevitably that is going to force you to rise to the occasion and demand better of you. Oh, I haven't gotten stronger in months. Okay, well, maybe I need to look at my protein intake. Maybe I need to sleep better. Maybe I need to go back to the drawing board with things. So I think training a way that you enjoy and tracking your progress, just those alone can help you make great progress, because if you are tracking progress over time and it's, you're not just staying the same year over year, like you're going to have to train more intensely. You're going to have to be more intentional about the weights that you're picking. So yeah, I think I'm always going to be a student, as I'm sure you feel as well, which is, a great reason why you have a podcast. Like I'll always be a student. I'll always be there to learn. And I think I can pick off tidbits from people and, try things out. If this works for me, it does. But I think my own personal anecdote is like, that's the test, like the ultimate test it has to pass. And, can I realistically see myself implementing this week over week? If yes, I'll welcome that in, and thanks for the info.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And I love that. I think that's part of what probably makes you a great athlete as well, is that you're humble enough to learn from others and take advice, have a coach like Paul in your corner to help make you even better. Because, you see guys who are very good and they have large egos and then they're like, hey, they're not going to listen to other individuals who could potentially help them. But at the same time, I think some people are maybe not as good as you are and maybe not have as much confidence. And I've certainly been there, and they just look for gurus in the space and they follow that and they forget anything that they're experiencing on their end. Whereas you found this really nice sweet spot, and I've got there over the last few years where I look at my own experience and how I'm responding, but also try and learn from the science, the experts, other individuals. And like you said, pick and choose what works, trial and error, and see what sticks. So, and your point on tracking is so important. I think you wouldn't do it with money, right? If you're trying to grow your business, you wouldn't be like, oh, is your business growing? It's like, oh, I don't know how much I even made the last year. So maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I used that analogy the other day on my Instagram story, just with, I think it was actually talking about tracking calories, but the same principle applies. Is, you're frustrated with this stagnant fat loss, but you don't know how many calories you're taking in. That's like trying to improve your financial state, but you've never looked at your banking information before. It's like, okay, this is step one. Come on.
Yeah. So well said. So Brian, I'm interested. You mentioned not competing this year, I believe. What are your future goals and ambitions? Like, where you've now won the title, are you looking to retain that or like get it back if someone obviously is going to take it this year, of course? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think, for me, I want to constantly improve. And I think competing every year as a natural athlete, it's really tough to do so. Especially as an advanced guy who's just been training for a long time. I don't think it's enough time to put on new lean tissue, bring a different package to the stage. So for that reason, I'm not going to compete this year, but it's not only just because of that. It's just because, kind of like what I alluded to earlier, is I want to be approaching it from the right mind state. Competing again this year and diving into another prep seems a bit too soon for me. Where I don't feel like I have that excited itch to dive fully in and give it my best again. I'm just now barely getting back to, a weight that I was at prior to prep from last year. Prep ended now, I guess 7 months ago at this point. So I'm just now getting back to like my full level of performance, really, that I feel I was at prior to competing. But will I compete next year? That's still up for debate. I'm erring on the side of yes, I will. And what's most exciting for me now, more so than retaining the title, is an IFBB Pro card. That sounds super exciting to me. See if that could be possible in classic physique. I haven't looked too much into it, but I have been seeing like the Kendalls and Jacob O'Neill's getting their IFBB Pro cards as natural athletes, being amazing representatives of natural bodybuilding in the IFBB, which is super exciting. And I think they're pioneers with that. I know there's been a handful of others throughout the years too, but yeah, so I'm toying with that idea of seeing if I could shake things up in classic physique in the untested realm as a natural guy. So
that's very interesting. Yeah, I mean, like we've mentioned many times, you have the mass. It's the posing, I think, for you, Brian, will be the key there, because classic, I've tried hitting some classic poses recently. I'm like, wow, these feel so foreign to me as just like a mandatory competitor. Like, I don't go into these flashy positions. So it's like it's a complete art form. So if you can get that down, man, see you hitting some classic shots, I'd be excited to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what's exciting for me, is seeing if that could be possible, but also perhaps both, because I like the idea of defending the title. And I think anyone who's watching this, I feel like it's changed over the years, and I'm not a historian on natural bodybuilding by any means, but I think in the present day, I'm confident in saying that the WNBF just does a really good job, as a federation, as an organizer of competitions, the quality of competitions, the integrity of the athletes, the quality of athletes that come. So, I'll always have love for the WNBF, and, perhaps another foray into trying to shake things up at Worlds. And for any athletes watching this who are considering competing, you can't go wrong natural competing in the WNBF. There's many other federations as well, but yeah, that also sounds exciting. So I'm still undecided. Say all that to say I'm still undecided. Yeah.
For sure. I can see the appeal with the IFBB as well, because they are the top of the top, right? Like, everyone thinks of, when they think about bodybuilding, that's where they go to. Like, they think of Arnold Schwarzenegger, the big names, because that is the extreme side of the sport of bodybuilding. And yeah, to be able to go in there and do it as a natural, I think, again, like, people who have taken it to the top of like like you have, and you've won as a pro the Worlds, like, they're the type of people that are going to be able to go into the enhanced side and do some damage. So it will be interesting if you do take it that route. And yeah, as a final finish, I think you've given some great words of advice and wisdom throughout this podcast. But if you were to talk to your younger self who's just getting into competing, or as someone else who's listening and they're just getting into it, do you have any kind of something that comes to mind of you would have liked to heard this from someone many years into this?
I think I think for me, the gym really has helped me through, uncertain times. It's helped kind of smooth out the peaks and valleys in life. It's been one consistent thing that has really provided so much to me, in terms of just like my mental health, the way I physically feel, the level of confidence with which I carry myself throughout my life. I can credit so much of that to expressing myself physically within the gym. And I wish, I wish a little birdie came to me when I was younger, perhaps in my late teens, early 20s, or mid 20s, and reminded me and encouraged me to be more cognizant and aware and grateful and appreciative of all of these benefits that the gym is bringing me, just outside of the immediate, like, oh, I've got a new delt vein, or I want to compete in this competition. And I feel like, I'm so excited to see the things that it brings me, because, another thing too is like women. Like, I thought getting in better shape and sharing it online would, like, I'd have all these girls in my DMs, but now it's just all dudes in my DMs asking how to get in better shape. Like girls don't really care. So like, keeping a tighter awareness and pulse on like what the gym can bring to your life and your level of self-worth and confidence, I think, can keep it in its rightful place and have you valuing it for a long time, well past when the vanity metrics stop mattering so much to you. I noticed for me personally, I'll be 33 here next month, like right around, 28, 29 ish, like, and I think this is probably natural for a lot of guys. Like I just stopped caring as much about like, like girls and impressing girls and like exactly what my physique looks like and how jacked I look in a t-shirt. Like that's cool. And I still want to look that way, but like, it wasn't all the rage the way that it was when I was 21, 22. Like at that age, I wish I understood like, hey dude, you're going to grow and you're going to start to value different things. At this point in my life, my big aspiration is being a dad, having a family, getting engaged, getting married. And I feel I'm on track for that. And that's what's most exciting me most now. It's not going to the bar and having a barreling chest or being able to flash a six pack or whatever. Like, so be aware of the reasons why you're training and the benefits that it brings you and just freaking enjoy it, man. Like just enjoy it. Be curious. Stay in love with the gym, like nurture that relationship you have with it. That's what I would say.
That's so well said. I think a lot of us get into the gym for that outcome oriented goal, and you just frame all those intrinsic values that you enjoy and the benefits that you get. And like you said, it acts as your kind of anchor. I know I'm the exact same way. Like I know if I train today, I've deposited a penny in like a positive piggy bank, no matter what else has happened in my life. So I think if I had that when I started as well, I think that would have helped me enjoy it even more. So to come from someone like yourself, Brian, who is at the pinnacle of this sport, that's awesome. And I hope a lot of people take that advice in heed. And thank you so much for coming on, Brian. It's been a fantastic chat. I want to make sure if people want to keep up with your progress, if they want to see you take on Classic and take on some enhanced competitors over in the IFBB, where should they be heading to keep up to date with everything you're doing?
Main channels are on Instagram. It's just my name spelled out at Brian De Costa. And I've taken an intermission on YouTube, but we are going to be returning shortly. And on YouTube, I'm also just Brian De Costa. You guys can hit me up there for future updates. And I'm super grateful, man. I've enjoyed the conversations I've listened to on Revive Stronger. And I think what you're putting out in the world is super important, man. So you're a great voice for natural bodybuilding and science-based coaching, like overall. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate it. And I'll make sure you've got your YouTube and your Instagram linked in the description. And guys, thank you so much for listening. You definitely got to check out Brian's physique now, since we've talked about it so much. I definitely guarantee you're going to be blown away and you're going to want to follow him and follow along his journey. So thank you again, Brian. Thank you guys for listening. Take care.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Losing weight fast while maintaining muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.